Good morning to you all. It's a great pleasure to see you here for the Warwick Drama Festival. One quick note from me, particularly for the teachers that are here amongst us. In your pack, you should also have had a sheet informing you about an event, the launch of the Warwick Classics Network, with an event that will be held at the University of Warwick on the 2nd of July. We're launching that event today. You can see some of the material and talks that are going to be provided, linked directly into the classical civilization and ancient history, GCSE, AS and A-level curricula. We would love to see you on that day, and particularly we'd also like to gather together teachers on that day, both from schools already providing these subjects and from schools who would like to start thinking about how they can introduce these subjects into the teaching curriculum. And we have now a huge amount of financial support from the university running through until 2020 to help this network gather pace and develop. So get in touch with me. My email is on that sheet. If you're interested in coming and bringing students to that day or participating themselves as teachers, we would love to hear from you. It's my job to talk a little bit about the plot. Now, there are many things about Euripides and Medea that are extraordinary. And you're going to be talking about some of them through the day in your different discussion sessions and seminars that we're going to this afternoon. You've heard some about some of them already, and you'll be seeing them yourselves in the performance this afternoon. But what I want to focus on is just how extraordinary the plot is. Because I think we often underestimate or rush over that fact to get to some of the other things that are quite so extraordinary about Medea. And we forget just how amazed the people sitting in the audience 2,500 years ago would have been as they see this story unfold, and as they put it into comparison with their wide and sophisticated knowledge of Greek myth as it had been performed, recited, and told to them up until that point in time. What you see on the stage today and what they saw 2,500 years ago was an extraordinary departure from anything they had borne witness to before. And that is something that we absolutely have to keep front and centre of our minds. I'm going to assume, please forgive me for those who are already experts in Euripides and Medea, but I'm going to assume no previous knowledge of the play. So I want to just briefly run over the plot of the play so we all have the key salient points in mind. The key characters are, of course, Medea and her husband, Jason. They are married and have been for some time. They have children. They are now living in Corinth. The play opens with Jason telling Medea that despite all of their shared history in marriage, and that shared history goes back to Medea helping him in his conquest of the Golden Fleece, of her betraying her own family and her homeland, her leaving that homeland to flee with him to eventually settle in Corinth. Despite all of that, he is now going to get married to somebody else, the daughter of the king of Corinth. This does not, as you can imagine, go down very well. He leaves. The king of Corinth arrives, and he knows Medea all too well, and he knows her reputation as a powerful and dangerous woman. And he insists that she leave. She be exiled from Corinth. Medea pleads with him and eventually gets him to agree to give her one day before she has to leave. Jason comes back and tries to explain himself. He couldn't possibly give up on this opportunity to marry a princess rather than the foreign barbarian Medea standing in front of him. He hopes very much that he will be able to help Medea in the future as his sort of mistress on the side and ensure that she's comfortable and their children are comfortable too. Perhaps even join his two families together at some point in the future. Medea reminds him just how much he owes to her and sends him packing. Medea is left almost constantly on stage through this performance. And she has a problem. What does she do now? She has a bed. At this moment, her guardian angel, if you like, her saving angel appears. That would be the king of Athens, who she persuades to give her asylum. She will go from Corinth to Athens. He has no idea quite what she has in mind, but she now has an escape route. She then starts to reveal her plans. Murder. Murder of the new bride, the princess. She will poison some robes, send them off as a wedding gift to the bride. Hopefully she will be so overjoyed at receiving these presents she will put them on immediately and she will die. But then the second set of murders is revealed for the first time in her mind to the chorus as they stand on stage and to the audience in front of her. She will murder her own children. Not because they've done her any wrong, but because she feels this is the best way to hurt her husband. Kill off his offspring, deny him descendants. With this knowledge now shared, she begins to orchestrate and put her plans into action. Jason comes back. She pleads for his forgiveness. She persuades him that she wants to give gifts to his new bride. He joyfully takes them off to give to the princess. Murders never happen really on stage in Greek tragedy, so the next thing we have is a messenger appearing to tell us about what happened to the princess. She put on those robes. The poison started to do its work. Her father, the king, in a desperate attempt to save her, envelops her in his arms, and he too is poisoned and dies. 2 murders. Medea is joyful, and now she must turn to her second murders, the murders of her own children. You see her on stage hesitate, but decide that she must go through with this action. She rushes off stage to kill her own children, and you hear their screams. Jason rushes on to the stage to confront Medea. He thinks just about the murder of his bride-to-be and of her father, and it is then that he realizes that she has killed their children as well. And then perhaps the most extraordinary scene of the play. Medea comes back on stage with the bodies of her children, not walking on the ground anymore, but held aloft by the gods in the chariot of the sun god Helios, and escapes to Athens, seemingly without any repercussions. That is Euripides' Medea. What I want to do is just compare that storyline with some of the other surviving Greek tragedies, that 2% that Emanuela was talking about, and then more widely with Greek myth as we understand it, to see just how extraordinary that plotline is. You don't need to remember or keep details of every myth, but what I want to do at each point is sum up quite how different Euripides' Medea is at every turn. Here she is, supposedly killing her children in an ancient Greek vase painting. So let's start with some surviving Greek tragedy. And let's just rattle through the sorts of murders that go on, particularly with it between family members. There's quite a lot of them. Many of these you may well be familiar with. In Aeschylus' Oresteia, of course, there is supposedly, way before the beginning of the first play, the sacrifice of Iphigenia by her own father, Agamemnon, in order to get favourable winds to go to Troy, although we're told that really Agamemnon is forced into doing this because he's insulted the goddess Artemis. There is, of course, the murder then of Agamemnon by his own wife, Clytemnestra, in response to the murder of their daughter Iphigenia. And then eventually there is the murder of Clytemnestra by her own son, Orestes, in response to the murder of his father. In Aeschylus' 7 against 3 Thieves, there is the murder of brother by brother in civil war. In Sophocles' Oedipus, Oedipus is supposed to be killed as a baby by his parents because an oracle has declared that he will in turn kill his parents if he is allowed to live. but the baby Oedipus is hidden away instead of being killed, and then in turn, unknowingly, ends up killing his own father and marrying his mother. In Antigone, Creon, the king's actions will lead to the suicide of his own son, Aemon, quite a murder. In the Women of Trachis, the wife of Heracles unwittingly puts poison onto Heracles' clothes and kills him. And in Electra, we return to the myth of Orestes and Electra killing Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. But there is always the sense that this is demanded of them, and there is a sense that there will be a journey towards absolution. Orestes, as many of you can remember, is pursued by the Furies, the goddess, spirits of revenge. What about in Euripides himself, in his surviving plays? What does he do and talk about that might be comparable with Medea? If you look at Alcestis, the wife, agrees to substitute herself for her husband Admetus. Somebody has to die. Admetus should be the one to die. Alcestis agrees to take his place. And by the end of the play, Heracles has turned up, magically battled death, and brought Alcestis back from the dead anyway. In Hippolytus, the goddess Aphrodite has been spurned, and so in revenge, forces a woman called Phaedra to fall in love with Hippolytus, who is the son of her lover. Phaedra then kills herself in shame for what she's done, having accused Hippolytus of rape. The father turns up, Theseus blames Hippolytus and enlists the gods' help to try and kill his own son. But all is resolved within the play just before the end, when the gods settle the scores, reveal what has been going on, and Hippolytus, in his dying breath, is able to reconcile with his father, and everything is set back as it should be. In Hecuba is the wife of Priam. She has to deal with her daughter being sacrificed on the tomb of Achilles by the Greeks. She then finds out her son has been killed by another Greek, a man called Polydorus. She seeks revenge. She kills Polydorus' son and blinds Polydorus. This is starting to sound a little bit like Euripides' Medea, but there's a big debate on stage at the end of the play about whether these were just actions or not. And it's concluded by the human contingent, led by King Agamemnon, that this was just revenge. This was right and just and proper course of action. In Euripides' Electra, we return to the story of Orestes and Electra killing their mother, Clytemnestra. And again, once again, this is resolved and resolved by the gods. In Euripides' Heracles, Lycus seeks to kill Heracles' wife and kids, so Heracles kills him, but then he's sent mad by the goddess Hera and goes on to kill his own wife and children. But again, he does so not, if you like, within his own power. He is pushed and forced to do it by the gods. In Euripides' Orestes, once again you get this story, the same story of mother killing, but everything by the end of the play is resolved, understood, justified, and set back in peace and accord. And in the Bacchae, very famous story where again a god has been insulted, Dionysus, and decides to take revenge by sending a woman mad, inspiring her to madness, so that she rips off the head of her own son. That's a lot of different plays. I don't expect you to remember how to take in all the details. But what are the key salient points where we see family murder in surviving Greek tragedy? It can be demanded by the gods. You have to do this. You can be driven to it by war. You can be committing the deed unwillingly or unwittingly, not even knowing what you're doing. You can be committing the deed while you are mad. You can be committing the deed unwittingly, particularly when you're being misled by the gods who seem to revel in misleading humankind. you can act yourself as a willing sacrifice. And you can engage in revenge killing, but it is nearly always within the context of the play, discussed, debated, justified, and agreed that this was the right course of action. Nothing on this list is what we see in Euripides' Medea. An insult has been done to Medea. She is going to be tossed aside after years of marriage. The way she decides to exact revenge is not demanded by the gods. No god has sent her mad. No god has made her do this unwittingly or unwillingly. She chooses insane, rational thought and argument, not only to kill the new bride, but to kill her own children, not because they've done her any wrong, but because she knows that will be the best way to get back at her husband. The murder, Medea's murder of her children in Euripides' Medea, is unlike anything in any other surviving Greek tragedy. And we can go a little bit further. Let's go a little bit further afield as we think about this moment towards the end of the play. Spread the net. Greek myth in its entirety. We think about the killing of children. What might be our comparisons? Well, one we might think about is the story of Atreus and Thyestes. Now, after much skullduggery fighting over the throne between Thyestes and Atreus, and they are all part of a cursed family going all the way back to Pelops. Of course, we'll also have descendants of Agamemnon, Clytemnestra, Orestes, and Electra. It's all that same family. Thyestes and Atreus. Thyestes is also sleeping with Atreus' wife, which doesn't help. Atreus learns of the adultery, or the skullduggery, and plots revenge against Thyestes. He kills Thyestes' sons, cooks them, and serves them up for Thyestes to eat. Once he has started to eat his own sons, Atreus then produces their heads and their hands to show to Thyestes to prove what he has done. The story goes on, of course, but then leads through to not just the killing of Atreus, but then Agamemnon, the curse rebounds down through the generations. Most famously, we don't have a surviving Greek tragedy that depicted this Atreus and Thyestes myth. We know from fragments that Sophocles and Euripides did write plays on this idea, entitled Aegisthus, Thyestes, and Atreus. It's actually most commonly seen in Roman tragedy, Seneca's Thyestes, that in gory detail recounts this story for us. And it's often read and thought about in terms of the perils of absolute power consuming itself and turning rational human beings into irrational creatures. Now, in some ways, this does overlap with Euripides and Medea for us a little bit. The protagonists are not mad. None of this is being demanded specifically by the gods. They're all doing what they're choosing to do knowingly, rationally, you might argue. But at the end of the day, all of this action is caught up within a curse that the individual players cannot possibly avoid, a fate. And indeed, they all end up themselves dead, or having revenge taken against them for the actions that they have committed. They all get their just deserts. And remember that final scene then from Euripides' Medea, where she is not subjected to any kind of rational debate about whether her actions were just or not. She is not herself killed. She gets to fly off in a chariot of the gods and escapes seemingly all punishment. Nor is there any curse that all of this can be so easily blamed upon. We could go to another myth, Tantalus and Pelops. Tantalus decides to kill his own son and serve him up to the gods to test whether or not the gods are really all powerful. If they are, they'll know what they're eating. It seems a rather extravagant way to test whether the gods are truly powerful or not. But for his actions, of course the gods know what's happening, Tantalus is punished for eternity. Rational decision-making, no curse involved, but punished for his actions for eternity. We're still not there in trying to find a comparison with the storyline of Euripides and Medea. Lycon and Arcas, you may well not have ever come across this myth. This is a man, again, who serves up a child, this time his grandson, to a god to see if he knows whether or not he's eating human flesh, whether he really is all-powerful. What happens? Punishment. Not only does Zeus murder the 50 other sons of Lycon, but he turns Lycon himself into a wolf. Again, punishment clear for the action undertaken. Procne and Tereus. Again, you may never have come across this myth, although we know that Sophocles did write a play, now lost, about this myth. Procne's husband, a man called Tereus, rapes her sister, Eunice. Procne takes revenge. She kills their son and feeds him to her father. This is starting to sound pretty good as a comparative myth. Rational decision-making. Revenge against the person who's done the insult, but through the killing of their own children as a brilliant way to get back at him. But is there punishment? Well, Tereus wants to kill Procne, and indeed the sister he raped, Philomela, who was part of the plan, for their actions. They flee his wrath and pray to the gods for help. And the gods' response is ambivalent. All three characters are turned into birds so that they can no longer pursue the journey of revenge. Is that acceptance? Is that an escape of punishment? Or is it just a neutralization of this story by the gods? It's not quite Euripides' Medea. There is not the support and aiding and abetting of the escape of Medea in the chariot of the sun god Helios at the end of the play. There is not an equal punishment for all the players involved. Jason is left on the floor, utterly, abjectly destroyed. Medea heads off into the sunset. There is something, I hope you will agree by now, something extraordinarily special about the play that you'll be watching this afternoon. And something that the audience 2,500 years ago would never have seen set before them, either on the Greek stage, or indeed perhaps even ever considered across the mass of Greek myth that they had grown up with. This is not part of a hand-me-down curse. It's not demanded by the gods. The revenge is sought not for the murder, rape of a loved one, but for an insult done to Medea. She's going to be cast aside, but what she is offered is kind of the place as set as mistress, and she's not going to be physically harmed in any way. She doesn't choose to murder the person who commits the slight, but to murder everyone around them in order, in her eye, rational, sane, thoughtful debate and judgment that's displayed on stage because she thinks that's the best way to hurt them in the long term. Kill the new wife and kill their own children. And we end up with another unintentional death, the death of the king as well. She chooses to kill her own children. She does it while entirely sane. And that sanity is proved time and time again through the play as you stand there, as she stands there on stage, and you watch her think through her actions and debate them with the chorus. Those incredible monologues that are studied now from the perspective of kind of the ideas of womanhood and women's rights back in ancient Greece and in the modern day, which we'll be thinking about later, are first and foremost, most importantly, the display of her rationality. It's a decision and a murder which is seemingly accepted by the gods, not just accepted, but supported and abetted, who spirit her away afterwards to be absolved from any further revenge. Now, what are we supposed to think about that? What will you be thinking about that when you see it on stage later today? What were the ancient Greeks thinking about that when they watched this 2,500 years ago? When they saw unfolding before them a storyline they had never seen before. When a woman was able to murder and to escape without consequence, and to do a murder of such horrendous nature, the murder of her own children. I think there's three things, for me, when I see this play, that come to my mind as a result. Medea, Euripides' Medea, first and foremost, puts humans, particularly Medea, in the place and powerful position that is most often in Greek myth occupied by that of the gods. Many of those stories I've quickly sort of run through for you today are where gods decide, for an insult done to them, that they will have their revenge through murder. Dionysus allows Agave to rip off the head of her own son in an unwitting, mad state because of what the son has done to him. An insult to God. Artemis forced Agamemnon to sacrifice his own daughter Iphigenia because he killed one of her deer. Artemis, having been seen naked by Actaeon, changed him into a stag and he ends up being killed by his own hounds. Aphrodite, because she's not being worshipped by Hippolytus, sets in train the story of the Euripides Hippolytus, whereby he will almost end up being killed. Normally, this kind of decision to move to murder for an insult done against a person is the action we expect of a god or a goddess in particular. We know Apollo and Artemis killed the sons and daughters of Niobe after she boasted of her fertility in comparison to their mother later. We know that Apollo stripped the flesh of Marsyas the satyr because he challenged him to a lute playing, aulos playing competition. Medea in this play stands not just in front of you as a rational, sane woman, but actually taking on the auspices and power that's normally attributed to a god, a goddess. In some ways, she acts like a god. But even amongst those examples I've just been throwing out, there aren't really any quite equal comparative examples of what Medea chooses to do. And particularly for the fact that she stands there on stage and you watch her think through her actions and debate them with the chorus. Those incredible monologues that are studied now from the perspective of kind of the ideas of womanhood and women's rights back in ancient Greece and in the modern day, which we'll be thinking about later, are first and foremost, most importantly, the display of her rationality. It's a
decision and a murder which is seemingly accepted by the gods, not just accepted, but supported and abetted, whose spirit her away afterwards to be absolved from any further revenge. Now, what are we supposed to think about that? What will you be thinking about that when you see it on the stage later today? What were the ancient Greeks thinking about that when they watched this 2,500 years ago? When they saw unfolding before them a storyline they had never seen before? When a woman was able to murder and to escape without consequence, and to do a murder of such horrendous nature, the murder of her own children. I think there's three things, for me, when I see this play, that come to my mind as a result. Medea, Euripides' Medea, first and foremost, puts humans, particularly Medea, in the place and powerful position that is most often in Greek myth occupied by that of the gods. Many of those stories I quickly sort of run through for you today are where gods decide, for an insult done to them, that they will have their revenge through murder. Dionysus allows Agave to rip off the head of her own son in an unwitting, mad state because of what the son has done to him. An insult to God. Artemis forced Agamemnon to sacrifice his own daughter Iphigenia because he killed one of her deer. Artemis, having been seen naked by Actaeon, changed him into a stag and he ends up being killed by his own hounds. Aphrodite, because she's not being worshipped by Hippolytus, sets in train the story of the Euripides Hippolytus, whereby he will almost end up being killed. Normally, this kind of decision to move to murder for an insult done against a person is the action we expect of a god or a goddess in particular. We know Apollo and Artemis killed the sons and daughters of Niobe after she boasted of her fertility in comparison to their mother later. We know that Apollo stripped the flesh of Marsyas the satyr because he challenged him to a lute playing, aloes playing competition. Medea in this play stands not just in front of you as a rational, sane woman, but actually taking on the auspices and power that's normally attributed to a god and goddess. In some ways, she acts like a god. But even amongst those examples I've just been throwing out, there aren't any quite equal comparative examples of what Medea chooses to do. And particularly the fact that she then seemingly gets away with it without any punishment, or the issues are not resolved as other gods step in and put everything back into its proper place. Actually, the more you think about it, Medea is not just on par with the gods, she's almost more powerful, more terrifying than what the gods themselves are renowned to be. But the closest kind of myth I can think of is that of Kronos and Zeus, the very father and head of the Olympian gods. Kronos ate his own children because he'd been told that one of them would overthrow him. Zeus was hidden away and ended up in turn killing his own father. But even then, it's not quite the decision process and action of Medea. And I wonder whether we're supposed to see in that final scene in which Medea is picked up by the gods and spirited away, not simply the acceptance of her actions, but actually almost fear, respect, and amazement at this humorous actions from God. She has acted, I would argue, on the stage in front of you, in a way that not even the gods have acted. And ends up in that final image as a figure perhaps even more powerful than the most powerful of the gods. She is perhaps more powerful, perhaps more terrible than they have ever chosen to be. Thank you very much indeed for your attention. Right, we are now going to split you up into a whole series of different groups.